In the Emperor's name.
Whoa!
Let none survive.
That looks entertaining. Oh, yeah.
Warhammer. It's got some fantastic games like Space Marine, Dawn of War 1 and 2, we don't talk about Dawn of War 3, Darktide, and recently I tried out Inquisitor Martyr, which actually isn't too bad. But one game that I continue to recommend to friends, especially that it's on Game Pass, is Warhammer 40,000 or Warhammer 40k for those of you who say 40k, but Boltgun. It's gotta be one of the better first-person shooter games that I've played, with modern controls and gameplay, but with retro styling to it. Honestly, it's Doom Eternal with its combat, but it's got a Warhammer skin and pixelation, and there is a full review of it on the channel. But Boltgun released some new DLC with Forges of Corruption, which gives us some new missions, some new weapons, some new enemy types, more heretics to slay, but forewarning, Forges of Corruption isn't your standard style of DLC that we're used to today. Developed by Urok Digital, Auric, that's how I'm saying it, but developed by Auric Digital, Forges of Corruption continues our story as Malum
Kaido.
Anyways, but we play as the returning Ultramarine going back to the Forge world of Graya to stop the heretic invasion on the planet again, spaced out over 5 levels, which can take about 30 minutes or so to do, and the last mission, well, I'll kinda get to that. But with this DLC we get some new weapons such as the missile launcher, which looks like it's been pulled straight out of 40k when I started playing it in 4th edition, and its function is pretty straightforward. You will fire a missile and it has a wide area of effect when the sort of missile lands and explodes. We also get the new multi-melter, which again looks like it's been pulled out of 4th edition, and it also acts like a tougher shotgun or more powerful sort of shotgun for tougher enemies, just like the melter gun did in the original game, and it slaps. It is great against Terminators, greater demons of chaos, but it does chew through ammo quicker than Nurgle getting followers at a frat boy house party.
Who wants a fucking burger? Who wants a fucking burger?
There are some new enemies as well added into this DLC too, with the Hellbrute. It is a chaos version of a Dreadnought, which, as you can expect, it is a bit more of a tanky style of enemy, which is where the multi-melter or weapons like the Volkite Cavalier comes in handy. We've also got Chaos Terminators with Lightning Claws, which, well, it's a close-range Terminator, so it's got Lightning Claws, and we've got the Chaos Havocs, which is a standard Chaos Space Marine with a rocket launcher. Gameplay, it is more of the same. There's combat arenas, enemies spawn in, you survive and purge the heretics, rinse and repeat. But as this is a DLC, it's a little similar to, say, the pacing of the DLC that we got in Doom Eternal. Forges of Corruption does start with a few cultists before getting right into it with Tzeentch and Nurgle demons, Chaos Space Marines, greater demon champions, and so on. So the opening of the DLC will start as a quick reminder of how to move and shoot before getting thrown somewhat into the deep end. As the DLC is only a handful of missions, with most of them taking, say, about half an hour or so to finish, Forges of Corruption isn't a long expansion. And for me, it more so acted as a bit of a reminder to how good Boltgun is, and why it's probably one of the better Warhammer games to release. But Forges of Corruption is more Boltgun, which isn't a bad thing. The music still slaps, the retro vibe to the game is great, the combat is meaty and juicy just like the original Gears of War series or the new Doom games, and the sound design is great, where you can still hear the shells of the shotgun hitting the ground after you fire them. This is something I mentioned in my original review, and I still love this little sound effect. But as Boltgun is an old school styled shooter, the DLC for the game as well is also old school in that it is about an hour to an hour and a half to finish. But Forges of Corruption is only about $5 to $10, which is actually pretty good, and it's more so reliving those old school costings for DLC. It's a short DLC, and it's a reasonable price point too. I mean, there are a lot worse ways to spend $5 to $10.
Would you like to feed your family of 4 for under $10?
Cheese.
We do also get the addition of a Horde mode as well, but to be honest, personally, for me, I only find Horde mode game modes entertaining if there's multiplayer involved so I can play it with friends, so I didn't overly check it out this time around. However, I did enjoy returning to Forges of Corruption and Boltgun. It was entertaining, sure. I found the DLC though was a little too similar to the base game, and this is where I might go on a bit of a rant, so bear with me. But Forges of Corruption, I think, while a fun DLC, it could have been a bit different. We've got Terminators and Chaos Havocs and the new Hellbrutes as well, but again, we didn't get any Slanesh demons. And it's kind of a thing. But Warhammer haven't really done anything with Slanesh in games for some time, excluding maybe the Total War games because they needed to add them into that game for the faction because you needed to play as all 4 Chaos factions or all 4 Chaos gods. But Darktide, while it is a really good game, focuses solely on Nurgle as the Chaos Demon, which I'll get back to when I come back to Darktide, which is very soon, but Boltgun has both Nurgle and Tzeentch demons with lesser and greater and proper massive demons, and the Chaos Space Marines we face off against are the Black Legion, so we should have some Khorne and Slanesh demons as well. No?
What does that have to do with anything?
No. He's got a point.
Also, I don't really think it's really spoilers, but the final mission, it could have been cool if we saw or heard or faced off against something really, but if we faced off or saw something with a proper Black Legion character like Abaddon or maybe Be'lakor, and sure, a single non-Primaris Space Marine against a character like Abaddon wouldn't really work for a fair fight in the world's lore, but one Space Marine alone on a planet against demons also doesn't really work for the game's lore as well, but it could have been cool if we saw something. Boltgun as well sorta loosely ties into Space Marine with references to Captain Titus, the main character of the Space Marine game series, and while there are references to Titus in some graffiti and in a taunt as well in the game, it could have been cool if maybe this DLC more so tied into the upcoming release of Space Marine 2. Like, maybe show us a pixelated Primaris Captain Titus, or now Lieutenant Titus. But who knows if we'll get another DLC for Boltgun, but here's just an idea I'd like to put out there. A Chaos DLC. We, the player, play as a Chaos Space Marine.
What the hell are you doing?
Now, most Warhammer games we've had have us play as Space Marines, or the Imperial, and we're portrayed as heroes in the game, where in the Warhammer universe there's no such thing as heroes because everyone is bad in their own way. But a 2-3 hour DLC, or a side game if you want, where you play as a Chaos Space Marine, the enemies will then somewhat stay the same if you think about it. The Chaos Cultists could be the Imperial Guard, Chaos Space Marines and the Terminators could be standard Space Marines and Terminators, and while you can't move over Chaos Demons to the Imperium, you could swap these Tzeentch Flamers out for green Salamander Space Marines with flamethrowers, and continue to use different Space Marine factions with different weapons as different enemy types, like we could introduce the Grey Knights and the Inquisitors. I think that could be kind of cool. But while I love Boltgun, it is a fun game and it's just satisfying, and this isn't a slag against Boltgun, but we've got Space Marine 2 coming out later this year, pretty soon actually, which I'm more than excited for, but can we stop having the Ultramarines in everything?
No.
It's kind of like the Blood Ravens were the Dawn of War poster boys. They were a Space Marine faction that was made for that game. Space Marine uses the Ultramarines, but sure, fine, and having the Blood Ravens as well in the Space Marine story game as well to provide some support at the end of that story for the first game was really cool. But I feel like Boltgun could have used another faction, as Boltgun is its own separate game. I'm a bit curious to see what faction the developers would have used or made rather than using the Boys in Blue, or maybe had a multiplayer style of system with co-op where different factions have different buffs, like Salamanders get a flamethrower and the Raven Guards get a jump pack or something like that. But anyways, I'm getting off point, but Boltgun Forges of Corruption is a classic DLC pack for a classic first-person shooter. The gameplay still slaps, the weapons hit hard, the pixelation gore is great, and hell, if you want you can play Boltgun with infinite ammo, all weapons unlocked, and invulnerability just by going into the main settings of the game and toggling them on and off. But hell, for $5 to $10 you can't really go wrong here. Boltgun will definitely keep you entertained between now and the release of Space Marine 2 as well. So whether you uphold the honor of the Emperor or you think Magnus the Red did nothing wrong, always remember to play with each other and play with yourself.